I love metalcore. It was a genre that helped combine hardcore and metal, revolutionizing breakdowns, screaming, and callouts. I'm aware that metalcore often receive a negative reputation for being part of the scene culture, characterized by trying to be very edgy, awful clean vocals, and transition to djent. Yes, djent. All that aside, metalcore had a number of legendary bands that helped pave the way in hardcore and perhaps metal in general. However, there was one band that helped make metalcore more intense and entertaining. They even created their own unique sound for blending southern rock with hardcore. Their shows are crazy, but not as crazy as the Dillinger Escape Plan. They're not famous, but not underrated at the same time. Just in between. Well, if you guess Every Time I Die, then you're correct. This is Every Time I Die and their story. Formed in Buffalo, New York in 1998 by the founding members Jordan Buckley, Andy Williams, and Michael Novak. Wait, you thought they were going to be a trio band? No, they need two more members to form Every Time I Die fully. So they brought John McCarthy and Keith Buckley. After they were fully formed as a band, they headed on tours from their hometown and Toronto. The early start in their music career aside from touring was appearing on the Red Star Records compilation album Sound and the Fury in 1999. They met producer Chris Logan, who was at Goodfellow Records, and would later sign them, record, and release their first EP, The Burial Plot Bidding War, in 2000. John McCartney left the band and was replaced by Aaron Radachak. The same year, they headed out on a complete tour across the US and Canada. They signed with Favorite Music to release their debut album. The band would record their album in the spring of 2001 at Sing Studio, which was produced by Killswitch Engage guitarist Adam Dukiewicz. They released their debut album Last Night in Town in August 2001. The album itself featured a metalcore and mathcore sound that may evoke the early Norma Machine albums with clean vocals added. Fun fact, Adam also produced that album. The album is nothing special, but it still features some great songs including Emergency Broadcast Syndrome, Jimmy Tangle's Method, and Nothing Dreadful Ever Happens, among others. In 2002, Aaron Radachak left and was replaced by Steven Michiki. In February 2003, they began recording their second album, Hot Damn. They were initially scheduled to release this album in June, but the release was delayed until July 1st, 2003. At the time of recording, Keith Buckley was finishing up at the University of Buffalo, having taken many literature courses to earn a degree in English. That's why some tracks on this album frequently reference famous literatures, which I will discuss in relation to Keith Buckley writing on this album.
I think that was, again, probably my father's doing, which was the Beatles. I think that the way that they, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, and these were books. These were audiobooks to me. Every song was a story, and I just reading the lyrics was like, oh my god, these are like tales, and these are scenes out of a novel, and I realized that it could be done.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So.
The first track, Romeo Go-Go, is based on the classic tale of Romeo and Juliet by William Shakespeare. Track 3, Godspeed Us to Sea, references Walt Whitman poem, Oh Captain, My Captain. Track 5, She's My Rushmore, had lyrics inspired by Shakespeare, A Midsummer Night's Dream. And track 9, Hit of the Search Party, references Julius Caesar novel by none other, Shakespeare. This album set the tone for the original sound as much as possible. They use a deep fried southern riff with a mixture of hardcore sound that works really well for them, and they continue to do so for future releases. This album was also their breakthrough, which led them to tour supporting acts like Jackass star Steve-O, their first show at the Warped Tour, and earned them a spot at Ozfest. In 2005, Steven Michiki left the band, but that didn't stop there. They recorded and released their third album, Gutter Phenomenon. This album was the first time they had guest vocals such as Gerard Way from My Chemical Romance and Daryl Palumbo from Glassjaw, as they would later go on to have tons of guest vocals. This album is similar to the last one as they continue to draw references to Shakespeare and his novels, a trend that will likely be carried over into their future releases. They featured a new bassist Kevin Falk from Between the Barry and Me, replacing Steven. However, Kevin Falk will only appear on this album and continue to play with Between the Barry and Me. The replaced bassist again is Chris Burns, but he also left and will not be recording any albums with them because he couldn't afford the touring schedule and salary. So, what are they going to do now without the bassist, says Keith Buckley? Well, why not have Jordan and Andy, who both play as guitarists, decide to try bass? They all agreed to do it, so they started recording in spring 2007, working with producer Steve Evans, and released the album The Big Dirty on September 4, 2007. You can see that this album and their last two albums have a lot of humor while also having a serious undertone in their lyrics. In 2008, they hired Josh Newton as the new bassist, and in 2009, they left Favorite Music to sign with one of the most well-known punk rock labels, Epitaph Records. They released their album the same year as New Chunk Aesthetic. Although this album doesn't feature guest vocals, it includes added vocals from Greg Puciato, Matt Cothran, and Pete Wentz. This album also brought back their mathcore sound, featuring a variety of different time signatures in each track. Additionally, it featured lyrics with numerous movie references, including titles and quotes. The 2010s were off to a rough start. Drummer Mike Novak, the guy who has been in the band since they were formed, left the band and was replaced by Ryan LeJay. You know how their albums are released with a 2-year gap? Well, their new album will take a 3-year gap. Bassist Josh Newton left the band, but the good news was that they have finished recording their new album, X Lives, which was released on March 6, 2012. This album has a more serious tone, unlike the humor and fun of their last 6 albums. The theme of this album is about their scene as a band and their touring life throughout the decades since they were formed. If you want to know where this album cover originates, it was taken at the 2010 G20 Toronto Cement protest, where many protesters were raising awareness about poverty, anti-capitalism, environmental issues, LGBT+ rights, and the Arab-Israeli conflict. That's where Keith Buckley found a photo of one of the fans in the protest wearing their shirt. After the album was released, they headed on tour, but how would they perform without their bassist? Guess who was back in the band? Steven Mishiki. Yes, Steven rejoined the band and felt like most of the original members were back, as if it were in the early 2000s. In 2014, they met Kurt Ballou, a band that were huge fans of and influenced, including his band Converge, and were excited to produce their next album, From Parts Unknown. This album is similar to X Lives, as it still discusses the band's life and drama they were experiencing with each other. It even had the same length as X Lives, except if you want to include their bonus track on both albums. They released their new EP, Salem, which include 2 new songs and 2 tracks from their previous album. After the EP was released, drummer Ryan LeJay left and was replaced by Daniel Davison. In 2015, while touring with August Burns Red, Keith left due to life-threatening emergency with his pregnant wife and an unborn daughter. This was a scary moment for Keith, but luckily, his wife and daughter survived the ordeal. This inspired him to write lyrics for a new album while he was in the hospital, which they released in 2016 called Low Teens. As I stated earlier, the theme of this album is focused on life-threatening emergency with his wife and his newborn baby. This album also opens up Keith's alcohol addiction and his recovery from it. Fans have described this as their softest album to date, as it features a more southern rock and alt-metal sound. On December 15, 2018, Every Time I Die will celebrate its annual holiday to honor the band's success and advocate for their hometown. It was named Tit the Season, which featured a lineup with other bands performing until their headliner, Every Time I Die. They will also do things differently than seeing your favorite band perform, like wrestling, ice skating, bucking reindeer, which is essentially bull riding with deer, and taking photos with Santa. Daniel Davison left and was replaced by Clint Goose Holyoke as the new drummer. In 2019, they began recording their new album, but in 2020, the pandemic spread worldwide, causing the recording process to take longer than expected. However, that didn't stop the band from recording and releasing their 2 new singles, A Colossal Wreck and Desperate Pleasure. In 2021, they released numerous singles before dropping their album, Radical, on October 22. This is their longest album they released, making up 51 minutes. This album is quite political and critical of modern humanity. I mean, not all the tracks, but a few of them, for example, like Planet Shit and A Colossal Wreck. It also explores themes of toxic relationships and grief over losing someone. The fact that they came back after 5 years without dropping any albums was a joy, and it was great that they were still keeping it going after taking a longer gap than their entire discography. However, sadly, Radical will be their last album release. 2 months after its release, Keith Buckley departed from the band due to mental health issues. The rest of the band decided to perform without him, but the show was cancelled. And in January 2022, Every Time I Die announced its breakup. It was devastating for the fans who had been waiting for the tour to support their latest album, Radical, but they suddenly didn't know that it would be their last. There was a lot of drama that resulted from the breakup, but I will try to describe what happened. When Keith recovered from his alcohol addiction, he decided to tour separately from the band because they were unsupportive of his sobriety. Allegedly, he left his wife and reconnected with his past girlfriend. Keith was very late to the practice for the show and became angry when Jordan suggested replacing Keith with other vocalists or fans. When Keith left the band due to his mental health before their breakup, Keith was going to release legal documents of his departure from the band without their permission. Keith felt that the band would have been gone without him, and he believed everyone was against him because of that. As a result, he turned out to be crazier, which led them to break up due to his terrible attitude towards them. God damn! I hope the rest of the band never reunite with Keith ever again. Or maybe they will. Every Time I Die released numerous albums throughout the 2000s and 2010s, and not a single one was disappointing. All other albums are worth listening to, even if you have your least favorite album by them. They influenced bands such as Underoath, Stray from the Path, and Knocked Loose. They also appreciate how they helped their community by organizing their own holiday festival and showing respect and trustworthiness to their fans. They have become the face of metalcore. If you miss Every Time I Die and want a similar band to them, consider listening to Buried Lovers as an alternative, as they almost have the same members as Every Time I Die. Jordan Buckley, Clayton Holyoke, and Steven Mishiki. They also added Fit for an Autopsy Will Pondy as a guitarist and the Dillinger Escape Plan Grab Puciato as a vocalist. They are a new band since they were formed in 2023 and recently dropped their debut album, Highly Irresponsible. This is like Every Time I Die just came back, just without Keith Buckley and Andy Williams. Keith started a new band, Many Eyes, in 2023 and dropped their album in 2024, The Light Age. They're like a metalcore and alt metal band. And last but not least, Andy Williams began a new band, Atomic Rule, a sludge metal group formed in 2024, which is set to release its debut album at a later date. This was the story of Every Time I Die. Hey, if you made it all the way to the end, I just want to say thank you for watching, consider like and subscribe for more content, and I'll see you next time guys.